Welcome back, all of you. In part three, as I said, we are going to talk about perfectionism, procrastination, reworrying, and what are some of the ways of re-looking at all these three things in our lives. Because most of us indulge in all three of them in various amounts, bits and pieces, depending upon the individual. But we do are actively engaged, in procrastination, worry, or perfectionism at different points of times in our lives. So when we talk about perfectionism, there could be, if we look at it from the CBT perspective, there could be different ways of looking at it. It could be moralistic perfectionism that you are seeking. So you won't be able to forgive yourself if you transgress boundaries, or if you did something that did not match up with your own expectations of yourself. Then you could have performance related perfectionism, that in order to be a good version of yourself, you have to do something perfectly well, or you have to succeed at a job, or you have to stand first in the class, or you have to win the Young Scientist Award at the Congress, or something or the other. And identity related, again, perfectionism is similar, where you have to do certain things in order to feel validated as a person, as an individual. Emotional perfectionism would be meaning to have constant control over your feelings, that you cannot show people your vulnerability, you have to be happy all the time, you cannot cry, you cannot be sad, you cannot, and especially emotional perfectionism in our cultural script. If you look at the situation of men and boys in our culture, I think that is where they probably experience a lot of emotional perfectionism, because our boys and men are not taught how to cry, how to express their emotions actively most of the time. So a lot of repression there, a lot of what should I say? Not sharing their feelings at different times when they would want to. And then we have romantic perfectionism, when you want a perfect partner. I am only going to settle down, marry, live in when I find this perfect person who is going to be perfectly compatible, and we never fight, and there are no disagreements, there are no arguments, and that's how relationship is defined. That does not exist, of course. So you keep waiting and waiting and waiting. Appearance related perfectionism, we see a lot in these Generation Z, and also the millennials, and of course even before that, where you are never satisfied with the kind of hair you would have, the nose you have, the eyes you have, the skin you have, the extra body fat, the lack of body fat. Anything that has to do with your body, you can kind of get stuck on, and keep looking at it with desirability in the other person, that oh, wish I had ears like her or him, or nose like him or her, or hands, or whatever it is that you are looking at to have as a perfect body part, or a perfect body, so to say. So there are, of course, ways of pursuing excellence. Cognitive behavior therapists, they say that you could pursue excellence, and you could still have a very healthy life. You could go after things that you want to, without being in this quest for perfectionism. So you don't have to run after perfectionism, but you can readjust, recalibrate, relook at your goals, that what am I pursuing. These goals are healthy, these are going to help me excel in life, these are going to take me where I want to be, but at the same time, I'm not stuck with perfectionism, I'm not tied down there. So here are some of the difference between a healthy pursuit of excellence versus perfectionism. If you look at perfectionism, it's usually motivated by fear of failure. When you are pursuing excellence, it's motivated by the joy of what you are doing. The process is joyful, you are driven by motivation, and that's what you want to achieve towards the end. If you are excelling, that's fantastic. Even if you're not, then you still enjoy the process. Then a related difference, that in when you're talking about perfectionism, the idea is to stand number one. And even when that happens, then also you're not satisfied. You sometimes think that, oh, it came on too easily. I mean, there were no other deserving candidates who could compete with me, and this is no fun. Winning here is no fun. So you're going to dampen your positive emotion, you are going to dissipate the strokes that you are getting for yourself, and it's not going to make you feel happy at all. The pursuit is going to again continue. And when you talk about healthy pursuit of excellence, then the efforts bring you a lot of satisfaction even when you aren't the greatest. So in a class full of students, you might have seen that the brightest of the students, are never part of the number game, and they are mostly never able to win positions a lot of time, because sometimes they get so engrossed in the joy of whatever it is that excites them about the class, that the materialistic pursuit of perfectionism, of having a number to the position, that does not happen. Of course, if it happens, that may be good as well. They would feel nice, but the thing is this, that they would not actively seek it. And when you're talking about perfectionism and self-esteem, then here, when we're talking about the rigidity of perfectionism, then you must earn your self-esteem. There is, you have to be special, intelligent, you have to be the best in order to be respected, in order to be acknowledged by people. But when you are talking about pursuing excellence, then you already hold yourself in unconditional positive esteem. You give yourself that love, that compassion that is required, and you have an endowed sense of self-esteem. You do not require these external validations. You know where you can be, you know where you are, you know your true worth, and these external tangible labels may not go a long way in sustaining your motivation. So you are intrinsically motivated when you are talking about pursuing excellence. And in perfectionism, again, you are terrified by failure. Failure is something that you would not be able to stand. We have seen what has happened in so many colleges across India, typically some of the engineering colleges, where we have seen young boys and girls ending their lives, all unfortunate reasons, and leaving in their notes things that are capable of shaking our own sense of reality, and how we view the world. In pursuing excellence, we are not afraid to fail. So you might want to reach a certain place, and you may not be able to reach there. You're disappointed, but you are not afraid to fail. You would not feel that disappointment engulfing your total personhood, eating you away day in and day night. You are losing your night's sleep because you fail. So that is not going to happen when you are pursuing excellence. And when you are also talking about perfectionism, you are constantly trying to be in constant control of your emotions. You do not want to appear vulnerable in front of others. And the fact that, unfortunately, if you are, then that bothers you for a long, long time. You cannot let that memory fade away, that people saw you breaking down, or people saw you crying, or people saw the vulnerable aspect of you. So if you're going to pursue excellence, you would have a lot of advantage in terms of your career aspirations, in terms of your professional goals, personal goals, all of that. So all you need to do is just think about, recalibrate again, your goals, and think about it, that am I being kind of driven towards perfectionism, or this is a pursuit for healthy excellence that I want to kind of participate in or drive myself towards. You would get the answer for yourself. If you need to change something, do that. If not, then just keep moving. And a related concept is procrastination. Related it is because I say a lot of times, a lot of people who are perfectionists, they keep procrastinating a lot. They keep putting away the work to tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and the final tomorrow never comes, and the tomorrow never translates to today. So a lot of times, because you do not have the perfect idea, you do not think you have a very fantastic, let's say if you're writing a novel, you do not have a perfect plot. If you're writing a research paper, you're not convinced that you have. So you would keep that particular work away for a long period of time, and chances are that you're going to drop it. Now, if you want to break the chain of procrastination, you have to again ask yourself this question. A lot of people keep saying this, that sometimes I also say that I'm not feeling motivated enough. But is it actually a lack of motivation? You have to ask yourself, do you really need motivation to do the work that you are supposed to do? I would give you an example of what is happening right now in Delhi University. All of us are supposed to fill up the promotion forms, and I've been telling myself that I'm waiting for the right kind of motivation, and I know at the back of my mind it's not about the motivation, it's about indulging in some productive action. So either opening the form and start filling it up, putting together my folders, making sure that I have evidence to support my documents, and so on and so forth. So it is just that kind of work. It seems drudgery, it seems unproductive work, not in the longer run, of course. So I'm not able to start the work. I would start, because again, that's important for my career, but I do not need motivation to start that work. Mastery and coping model, most of us are brought up with the idea that we have to be the best in whatever we do for ourselves, and we have to be in control, we have to put our best foot forward. So unfortunately, it's always about being the best, being special, doing this, doing that. It's never about calibrating or relooking at our expectations from ourselves. It's never about that it's all right, this is, I have to do this in a certain way, I'll just do it, I have to finish this work, so I'll finish it. I don't have to master the environment, I don't have to master the events, I don't have to master the situation all the times. All of us also have this embedded fear of failure. Many a times when we are doing or wanting to do something, deep down inside, we're also afraid to fail. So sometimes we procrastinate because we are afraid to fail. I have already talked about perfectionism, so I'm not going to talk about it more, but it's very, very significantly correlated, if not it's not causing, but it's very significantly correlated with procrastination. So you have to see for yourself that whatever it is that you're procrastinating, is it related with your ideation of perfectionism or not? Sometimes the work that you are procrastinating, that may not have that may not be rewarding for you, so to say. And I'm not talking about tangible rewards. That may not give you enough of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, depending upon, of course, the task that we are talking about, endorphin, whatever it is. So I mean, it may just lack the reward. You may not even be wanting to do it, but because of n number of reasons, you could have committed to that particular work. Of course, our shoulds and must statement always interfere, that I have to do this work in this way. If I am able to, I remember when I started learning how to cook, it was and bake, it was so important to have all the ingredients together. Even if one ingredient was missing, it was like, nah, I can't do it, I don't have all the ingredients. And now, I mean, give me anything and I can try and make a dish out of it. Only I can eat, of course, nobody else, but at least, yes, it's eatable, it's healthy, it'll help me grow. So the must and should statements have to be relooked at, that am I kind of tying myself down with these statements that I should write my research paper in a certain way, it should be read or published in an APA journal, or it should be referred a number of times, it should be having this, the index factor should be this. Or if it's about personal situations that you're talking about, then I have to do this. So every time you're putting a must or a should around you, you are tying yourself down to a lot of pressure. Sometimes you also commit to work that may not excite you. For example, a colleague of yours has asked you to contribute a chapter in a book. You are not particularly excited about the book, maybe the chapter, maybe the topic, you don't feel connected, and still, because this is a colleague and you find it difficult to say no by virtue of who you are as a person, so you unfortunately say yes. But it's unfortunate because you're not working on that book, and that book is suffering because of your missing deadlines. So this is what you have to keep in mind, that every time you are saying yes to people when you don't want to, you're not doing them any good, you're doing them more harm. And of course, one other reason that cognitive behavior psychologists talk about is a lack of desire. You may not even want to do that particular thing. I mean, it may not even be exciting enough for you, even when you choose it for yourself. It can be a career, it can be your choice of a spouse, it can be your choice of a holiday vacation. Maybe you do not even want to go there, do that, be with this person, but you have still chosen. So you keep procrastinating the short-term goals associated with that event, that vacation, that person, that career choice that you have made for yourself. So we move on to worrying, the third concept that I wanted to talk about. I've talked about perfectionism and procrastination. Now, worrying is something universal. Nobody can say or assert that I don't worry. Everybody worries. Of course, everybody worries because we have a number of reasons. We can always kind of invent a lot of reasons, especially when you're talking about people who tend to have a lot of anxiety. then it's very easy to kind of think about reasons to worry. Worry can be constructive, and worrying can also be absolutely futile. So you have to make that difference, that whatever am I worrying about, is that a solvable problem? Do I have a solution to this problem? If no, then what is the point of worrying if there is no solution? If you do not know when is the COVID-19 going to end, when would we have a vaccine to it? I mean, right now, if you do not know, then just thinking about it is not going to help the situation in any which way. You can read about it, you can feel more in control by reading the progress that different labs are making, but at the same time, you wouldn't get anywhere if you just keep worrying about the problem. And of course, when it's constructive worry, it's related with a specific situation, a specific thing, a specific person, a specific event. When it's unconstructive, or worrying just for the sake of worrying, it's not related to anything specific. I can ask you to worry and you can keep on worrying the entire day. I mean, if I would ask you to pinpoint what are you actually worried about, you may not be able to pinpoint it, and you may say, oh, it's just a general feeling, I'm just worried about 10 different things. And constructive worrying is mostly less than 10 minutes old, if I may say so. I mean, you will not worry for more than 10 to 15 minutes if it's constructive worry. But unfortunately, if you're worrying for the sake of worrying, it's the Duracell battery that you are charged with. You are going to go on and on and on and on, and that's not going to stop for you. So if it's that kind of worry, then sit down and think for yourself. In constructive worry, you also kind of acknowledge the factors that are beyond your control, and then you let them be. It's not this that you keep worrying about the factors that are beyond your control, and you keep thinking about it, that oh my god, these are beyond my control, what to do, what not to do. And when you're worrying for the sake of worrying, you just refuse to acknowledge that factors are outside your control, and you keep on worrying. At the back of constructive worry, you would see a real problem, an issue that is solvable. When you're talking about worrying for the sake of worrying, anxiety dictates your worry, your anxious thoughts, your fear of not knowing what is going to happen next. That dictates worry. So stop for a while and think about that. What kind of worry do you indulge in normally? Is it constructive, or do you just worry for the sake of worrying? And one technique that I learned in my training and I use very often, and I find it so helpful, I would strongly recommend to all of you, is to take worry breaks. You can tell yourself, everybody worries. Of course, we have a number of problems to worry about. You can tell yourself, you can fix a time. I fix it. Most days I fix it that, all right, I'm going to take my worry break at 6:15, and between 6:15 and 6:30, all I'm going to do is worry. Initially, it sounded ridiculous even to me. I thought that, how is that going to work? But if you trust me, over the years, it has helped me so much. Every time when I'm working, or I'm being productive, or I'm with my family, or trying to optimize on my time over something that matters to me, and a worry pops up, I tell that worry that come back later, now is not the time. And it has helped. Worry breaks really help. So once when you start practicing it, chances are that you are going to feel the benefit as well. So again, we are going to stop and rethink about things that we have kind of discussed. So, I mean, we have to kind of learn to be okay with imperfections. It's all right. I mean, these are internal dialogues that we need to create for ourselves. That it's okay to be imperfect. I mean, who is going to judge you for being perfect every day, if that is what you kind of seek? And you also have to realize that organizing is fantastic. Having an organized schedule, a calendar, a room, everything, that is so fantastic. But obsessing with organization is not that. You're not able to sleep because you couldn't clean your room, or your study table, or your desk. If you're obsessing so much, then that means that is hindering your development. Detailing in work is desirable, but feeling stuck when minute details are not available, then I would say that that's also hindering. So stop and think that what is it that you really want. Plans, they are fantastic, but if you have some failed plans, then just thinking about them and feeling bad, that doesn't help. So think about it, that okay, it's gone, let me do this some other way. Sometimes it's also all right to be lazy, and take it easy. But when it comes to procrastination, leaving everything to the last moment may not be helpful. So being lazy is all right. Recalibrating your expectations with self, others, and people around you right now during these times is something that is strongly recommended from various sources on different platforms. And it cannot be reiterated enough that you cannot have the same expectations that you had with yourself last year, last time, when things were better. Right now is the time that whatever you are doing, just pat yourself for that, give yourself credit, let that serotonin flow, let that dopamine flow. Feel the reward, feel happy. If oxytocin is not coming from hugs that you are receiving from your loved ones outside your home, then give yourself those hugs. So you just have to take it easy. If you are not going to do that, then worry into perfectionism, into procrastination can actually make life very, very difficult. And of course, when we're talking about perfectionism, we also have a very strict sense of time sometimes, which of course is fantastic. Punctuality is an awesome attribute to have, but it's also all right sometimes not to be in control of time, especially living in a country like ours in India. I mean, you want to reach on time 90% of the times. You are on time twice or thrice. If you are not, then you have to just kind of relax. It's all right. The word is still going to be where you left it. So I'm going to summarize this part quickly, that we talked about procrastination, we talked about perfectionism, and we talked about worry, not in that order. Perfectionism, again, is something a lot of people think. A lot of studies also that have been done in the area show that perfectionism is related with depressed moods as well in a lot of cultures. In one of my own studies, I've found that perfectionism in our country is deeply embedded in the cognitive trials or ideas that you have around your views around the world, your views around yourself, and the view that you have around others. So, looking at perfectionism, that do you want to pursue excellence or do you want to be perfect? Re-looking at that, what do you want to do to break procrastination? What do you want to do differently? Doing things that matter to you, maybe doing things that excite you rather than just saying yes to everybody that comes across your way. And worrying is fine, worry as much as you want to, but have regular worry breaks so that you are not taxing your system, you're not taxing yourself, and you're not taxing those around you, because when you worry, people around you worry as well, and that does not take you anywhere at all. And the last part is this, that recalibrating your expectations around your own goals, professional and personal both. If you have been publishing 5 papers in a year, bring them down to 3, 2. If you've been publishing 2, I would say just work on 1. If you are if you have goals of writing a book this year, finish 2 chapters and pat your back. So just recalibrating. This is not a normal year. We are living through challenging times, and if you would be more compassionate towards yourself, that's really going to help you. People around you, your colleagues, your students, all of them are going to find a more productive you. So thank you so much. I see you in a bit.